Tuesday night, it's cheese night, and I can't find my own face. Now that just doesn't sound good, does it? So let's get rid of the branding and start talking cheese. Well, good evening, everybody. I don't know if you're out there. I sent out a very incorrect tweet today saying that I'd already had this fantastic conversation with Catherine, which obviously was complete manure. That just goes to treat me to try to do things in advance of Bill Hannah when I'm clearly so much better at just winging it. Okay, so a little bit about the Academy. You all know the Academy of Cheese. The Academy of Cheese is the leading cheese training organization, maybe, in the world ever. That's not just me saying. We have at least 3 other people who agree with me. We've had a very good summer, and we're just kicking on. It's a second interview we've had. We've got Catherine Mead tonight. Now, Catherine Mead is a fantastic individual. She's built up her cheese-making company, Line of Dairies, to bring artisan and large production cheeses into both the supermarkets and all across the delis in the UK, which makes her a rare beast of being a mid-sized family business that is both doing well and creating new and artisan products. So let's meet her. All right, Catherine, are you ready? I know, put your glass of wine down. I can see it. Here we go. Okay. Hello, how are you?
Very well indeed, Charlie. How are you?
Extremely fine, extremely fine. So, where are you? That's a very sort of
dark. Tonight. I'm actually in near Newquay, but I live in Falmouth, down in West Cornwall. I wake up every morning to the sunrise over the harbour, looking at the sea, and over on the headland over at Roseland, where I can see the fields of cows and sheep. And then I wend my way over to the dairy, which is about 5 minutes drive away in a very rural part of Cornwall known as Stithians, and we're surrounded by trees, woods, and probably not much else in truth. And
I imagine it gets a bit wet down there on occasion.
We have 52 inches of rain a year, which is probably about 4 times as much as you have on the east coast of England. So yeah. Oh. We're pretty damp.
I've driven through there many times. It's very beautiful. You go down these little dells and the streams are coming down. You get the thick hedges and the fields on the hills. It is very beautiful. It must be good pasture.
It's really good pasture. And Cornwall, that part of Cornwall has a lot of what they call grade 2 dairy land. So this is permanent pasture, permanent grass lays, and it's the best kind of land for dairy production. And our climate favours being out from mid-March, maybe even earlier if we're on a good season, and we may bring the cows in again in November. So we have a very long and extended grazing season, which means that most of our milk comes from grass. And through the winter, of course, we're feeding silage. So it's a really perfect environment for dairy and for producing milk for cheese.
Yeah, I was talking to Mary Quick, who's a bit north of you. You're probably the only person who is south, well, not many. And she was saying that you're bringing your cows in for maybe 8-10 weeks. Really not very long at all.
Yeah, you can keep them out for a fair time. I mean, it just depends on wind and rain. So we can keep them out in the cold, and you could feed them hay, or you can feed them silage outside. But it's when it gets particularly wet, because apart from anything else, you're churning up your fields, and therefore you're cutting up next year's food. But we do have a very long extended grazing season. It's a warm climate, but it is terribly wet. But wet climates grow good grass, so there's a swing and a roundabout in that.
Okay, well, we've just got a comment in from James. He loves your cheese, and he obviously loves the NHS as well. Your cheeses are they're iconic. Now I want to come back to them because you've got your new kid on the block, the Cornish Kern, tasting tonight. But as much as we love your awesome products, you're also chair of the Specialist Cheesemakers Association, which is like both the sort of flagship and lifeboat for all the small cheesemakers of the UK.
It's the Specialist Cheesemakers Association is an amazing organisation. It's a membership organisation, and we have 300 cheesemaking members. I think the thing that is so special about the Specialist Cheesemakers Association, and indeed the specialist cheesemaking sector, let's say, is it's so entirely collegiate and supportive. And we don't see each other as competitors, we see each other as friends. And that sounds corny and it sounds trite, but there is so much gain from supporting one another in endeavors that can be incredibly trying and incredibly difficult. And there are moments when I would doubt that there is a cheesemaker who has not felt the deepest depths of despair in making cheese and the highest stages of elation when it goes right. But cheese is such an organic process, and it just goes left field when you least expect it. And sometimes the conundrums and the challenges, are beyond Sherlock Holmes, and being able to, as a cheesemaker, go into your membership organisation and say, help, what on earth am I going to do with this? This has become such an intractable problem. So we are very supportive. We're very, we're a real collective, and we don't see each other as a threat. We see each other as we enhance the organisation. The more of us that are there, the more contributions, the better and the stronger we are as an organisation. And I think to that end, we're seeing that when we get into those really very serious arenas of policy and government, because they're taking us seriously now. They take us really seriously because they see how well we work together. And we're very connected to our raw materials, to farming. Many of us are farmers and producers. And we engage in a really positive way, both in terms of the agricultural, environmental side, but also in the food safety, food standards side.
Yeah, I don't want to get into it tonight, but the issues around raw milk are forever popping their head up and needing to be addressed as people learn more and more about its the challenges of handling it, but also the opportunities that it provides.
I think we've worked so hard in the last 20 years at really bringing the policy writers, the opinion leaders, the champions together for the case for raw milk, and why it is it adds so much breadth and diversity to the cheese offer. That's why we have so many amazing, great cheeses. And tonight we're going to taste some cheese. 3 out of my 4 are raw milk. And that's not by way of saying I think raw milk cheeses are better than pasteurized cheeses, but I think that raw milk cheese brings an extra dimension, an additional dimension, and gives us that much greater diversity. And I believe that we have really been able over the last, as I say, 20 years to develop our thinking, develop our understanding, and to bring people with us. And I think our raw milk cheesemakers would not feel the threats that they probably would have done 20 years ago from policy that was possibly going to start clamping down on raw milk cheese in the way we've seen in the US and in Australia. But and that's partly, not totally, but it's partly because we're very organized as an association, and we are looking at continuous improvement and continuous understanding.
So you're a supporter of cheese rights, and that's you're on the lobby
cheese
group.
equality. Cheese rights. Yeah, cheese rights and cheese equality. And we're right behind it. Yeah.
All right. Well, you've chosen cheese tonight. You have chosen from Cumbria. We've got Wynyard, sometimes known as Felston. We've got 2 from Julie Cheney at Suffolk, as St Jude and St Cyra, and you've got your own Cornish kern. I'd like to leave Cornish kern to last, if that's okay. So, what do you want to bring in?
So, I'm starting with St Jude, which was Julie's first cheese. So Julie is based in Suffolk. She is based down at, I think we pronounce it Bungay,
Yeah, no, I don't
Fen
have that.
Farm. Fen Farm, which is a farm where Johnny Crickmore farms his Montbéliards.
Hmm.
And Julie is a fantastic cheesemaker. She's absolutely exceptional. And she is so good at producing soft, white rinded raw milk cheeses. These are difficult cheeses to produce at all sorts of different levels, but Julie has absolutely nailed it. And she um, has worked with the specialist cheesemakers over many years. But recently, and I picked this cheese partly because it was an example of a project that we did with her. We had recently had an award called the Patrons Award, and our patron, His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, supported us in developing an award where we could help cheesemakers look at their succession planning. So, in agriculture generally, we have a concern that there are some real crafts that could, in time, be lost if we don't have successors coming through. And Julie is working with a young cheesemaker called Blake, and she really wanted to think about how she could remain engaged in the business, but Blake could come
Move it on.
through. And so through the Patrons Award, we were able to help Julie in developing her own thinking, and for the two of them to work together to create a bit of a plan. And that is something that more cheesemakers would
Need to
benefit
start
from.
thinking about. Yeah,
And
no,
we,
it's true. We look at cheesemakers not just in this country, but in Italy and France. And in the old days, it was just a fact that the children would somebody from the family would take on what their parents had done for many years, and that's just not happening. As it's more profitable to go and be a marketing specialist or financier or something in the big city than stay around and frankly earn not very much and get up very early and get your fingers dirty and not have many friends being a cheesemaker.
absolutely. And there are many cheesemakers who don't have any natural successors for one reason or another. And therefore, they may need to look outside the family. And if they're looking outside the family, it is trying to find a way that, a mechanism for doing that benefits both parties and ensures longevity for the product. But St Jude is an absolute corker of a cheese. White, bloomy.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you can see that, but the texture, can I make this focus?
Absolutely amazing texture.
The texture's got almost like a filament kind of, you can focus, my friend, you can do it. It's almost got a filament type texture, but when you put it in your mouth, you can't feel those filaments at all. It descends into just a very creamy kind of paste. What's a better word for it?
It's like a mousse.
It is. It's like a sour cream mousse.
Mm.
And it's got an incredibly light texture. And I would even argue it's got even that hint of egginess that you get in mousse, if you do know what I mean. And the way that it's come apart, you're just seeing these filaments of cheese come across. I don't know another cheese that has this texture. I know lots of sort of that it describes itself as a San Marcelin style, but it's not really. It just looks a bit like it.
No, I think it is unto its own, and it's got it takes a sort of a slight sort of grassy nuttiness, and this sort of, it's so unctuous. It feels so indulgent and so sort of it's creamy and it's smooth, but it's not over rich. You just want more. I've got this piece here. It's going to be as much as I can do not to eat all of it.
Well, I don't have any stretchments. I'm going to.
You're going to. I mean, this is box of chocolates in front of the television, isn't it? It is absolutely stunning.
This is a cheese. Now, I'm told, because I'm not a cheesemaker, that raw milk has possibly its strongest expression in these very young cheeses, where the the bacteria can most be shown to be at play, if I can put it that way, with producing the flavors and the textures. And you do feel that this cheese is doing that. It is. It's like it's a type of cooking with bacteria. You're using the bacteria to engage the cheese on a journey and deliver flavor and texture through it.
So everything happens very quickly in these younger cheeses. And if I had my glasses on, I could see the date of production on this, which I think this is probably only 4 weeks. I'm guessing at it, because I haven't got my glasses, so I can't actually see clearly. But I think you're absolutely right that it's the production. I mean, Julie is a very she handles her curds so gently, and she's so sensitive in this. And it,
but surely this is the
really
problem with
taste that
Succession, is that her contribution to her cheese is substantial, and that to bring in another person to take her role cannot help but change the cheese. Surely,
another person may well express it slightly differently, but it doesn't mean to say a slight differentiation would be a poor thing. And if in that situation, their cheese making is so united, the two of them, that actually they're going to be pretty close. You're going to get some changes and variation anyway, because you'll get changes because of the milk from week to week to week to week to week. Then you'll get changes because the temperature outside is changing from week to week to week to week to week. Then you'll get some changes.
Have a bigger impact on a fresh cheese than some other cheeses.
Exactly, and then you're going to get some changes because the molds are doing something slightly different in your maturing room, because your humidity has fractionally changed, or your heat or cold has slightly changed. And so when you've conflated all of those different changes together, and then you overlay another cheese maker, it's amazing that you can get two products that ever taste the same, really. But I think that they come together, and actually the cheesemaker's part in this kind of situation is such that you will get consistency in your cheeses. You'll get more consistency between those two cheesemakers probably than you will between the seasonality of the milk.
Well, because of course, all what you just said is true, and it is most of the story. But between leaving their farm and getting to me, and leaving their farm and getting to you, they've got a bit of character from that part of their journey as well. So, I went to my local cheese shop. Thank you very much, Fran, down Cheese Please in Lewis, and she got these in for me today at extremely short notice, and I was a bit concerned that this was going to be forced or underripe or whatever. So this is without question, what I've got in front of me today is the best St. Jude I've ever tasted. It's not.
It's absolutely amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. This one, you're looking at this and going, because it's just screaming. It's like a red light going on. Oh my God, how farmyard is this going to be? And it ain't. It ain't.
Oh, you've eaten quite a lot of it.
Yeah, give me a chance. I'll finish it. To be fair, my wife just came in and she nicked some. She's listening. She's listening to it downstairs, and she clearly couldn't resist coming up for going. If it's that good, I need some now.
Yeah.
So I'm very pleased.
Before you finished it.
Right. Next up, I think you better go to the Sincera, because it is a different take on the same product.
It's a different take on the same chart. So, Julia's worked very closely with Neal's Yard Dairy, and they have this fantastic spa terminus building, their new building, and Sincera is a slightly more mature and washed, bloomy rind. So again, have you got some there, Charlie, or not?
No, you didn't send me any.
Oh God, it's all my fault.
OBE, most important cheese person in the country, can't even get me a decent cheese.
So
You've got to get that
This,
off the camera. Your camera is going to make it hard for people to see.
okay, I'm going to give it a go. But to be honest, in the box, you're going to see probably on camera very little differentiation.
No, I can't
No,
see anything. It
no.
looks
Okay. So we're talking about another little wooden box. This one is totally enclosed. And this is, I suppose in texture, it's like a very, very ripe camembert. So you've got a very bloomy rind. You've got some, some proteolysis going on, i.e. the rind is breaking down. Under the rind is so liquid, but the core is still quite hard. And I'm going to eat this bit because it's going everywhere.
Oh,
And
hello. I've just tried to share that. I've gone for the wrong one. Okay. Screen share. Let's get rid of you. And let's see if I can find one for choose screen. And let's go for the other one. See if that's any better. Oh, it's just that one again. Okay, let's just get rid of that.
So you can see now that.
Okay, that was it. But it from the outside, it looks a bit like an époisse, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah, very pale. It's very pale, and it's got that lovely nuttiness and very developed flavour. I've got some linens going on in there, and that kind of that lovely smelly rind. But I love this cheese because some of those smelly rind cheeses deliver really, really hard, heavy on aroma, but not so well on taste. You can be a little bit disappointed.
Totally.
You take it to your nose, you take it all through your nose and the back of your throat and think, wow, this is going to taste, amazing. And actually, when it gets to your mouth, you think, oh, hang on, there wasn't so much going on in that one. Whereas this cheese is almost the opposite. So you've got a fantastic mushroomy, celery, little bit as in cellar rather than celery. Cellar, sort of dampness, humidity, but actually that flavor is really, really present and so rounded and nutty and again, like St. Jude, really unctuous, but a bit more dense than in its paste than St. Jude. But it feels so luxurious. It's fantastic, absolutely wonderful.
So this is a cheese, it's a washed rind cheese. Would you does it have any of those sort of meaty elements that you might get on a cheese like this?
I'm getting a tiny bit, but not masses. Not masses. I'm getting. I feel like I have more. It's more sort of herbage and vegetable-y, and a little bit, with some nuts and grassiness. More of those sort of little bit of cabbage, but it's just got a sort of just a different dimension to St. Jude.
And the texture, how's it changed from St. Jude? How's the texture moved on?
So St. Jude is moussey and light and fluffy and a little bit striated, whereas the Sincera is much. It's got this sort of more like a really broken down camembert, kind of firm in its core, and then the rind that's just breaking down gently and gets sort of that runniness under the rind. So you get that sort of the two textured cheese without getting slipped skin or anything like that. You've got just a really beautiful combination of gooiness and a little bit of firmness in the core. I imagine it's right that you leave this to mature longer and it just becomes really seriously gooey throughout. And you take it out of this little beautiful little wooden box and it will just walk across your table.
Because this is an example of the collaboration you're talking about in the FCA. You've got a cheese made by one member and a cheese brought on by another member.
Another member, yeah.
And that belief that creating a new cheese is a team effort. It's something that you can get together and bring something new on. There's the skills of affinage, which in real terms are sort of newly identified in this country, more of a European thingy. And now in Europe, affinage is very much thought of as a separate sport. you have the maker and the affineur.
Mm.
And bringing that in through the Specialist Cheesemakers Association, through members like Neil's Yard, allows us to develop more cheeses, more different types of cheeses, and specialisms to appear in our industry that allow which perhaps the cheesemaker themselves doesn't have the skill or the time or the opportunity to develop themselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that also, a good affineur, and there aren't that many in this country, but the number is growing, and so there is greater interest than we ever had before. And a really good affineur does significantly enhance. There's so much uplift from the more straightforward presentation, because they are looking at cheeses and judging when a cheese is right for certain markets, because one market doesn't necessarily want the cheese at the same point in time as another market, and they have the ability to take it on and really sensitively work with that cheese until they get it to just right. Because this cheese like this would be an absolutely classic example. They'll be sending it out to some customers who are saying, I'd like St. Jude and St. Sarah, and I'd like to have it with a shelf life of 2 weeks. It'll be here and gone. Therefore, let's keep it, because they're going to have it for no time at all. Where conversely, others might say, well, I'd like it for 6 weeks, in which case you're going to have to get it ready to go and assume it's going to be eaten within a week of arrival. But it's also got to keep performing for 6 weeks beyond that, which is quite a challenge.
Huge challenge. Let's turn to now. The third cheese you picked out is Wynyates.
Yeah. So Wynyates, this is Tom and Claire Noblitt, who are up on the edge of Cumbria, and they have been making a raw milk Wensleydale. And I think this cheese is fascinating because, again, you're getting so much of the flavour of the grass coming through, the flavour of the herbage.
Give me the screen. Let's look at it.
So
come back. Right, okay.
Can you see that?
Just about.
So interestingly, we've got a bit of maturing under the rind. This is a cheese that ordinarily I would expect to be pretty acid, pretty crumbly, and in quite an open texture. And this cheese is not acid, is not open, and it's not crumbly. It's a much closer texture. It breaks very gently, and it's got sort of a softness and it's quite pliable. But the interesting thing about it, very, very distinctive flavour, but it's not a flavour that we necessarily associate with that very acid Wensleydale that we meet most normally. We're most familiar with.
Question: if it doesn't look like a Wensleydale and it doesn't taste like a Wensleydale, why is it a Wensleydale?
Because it's made to the recipe of a Wensleydale. So it will be made with this fairly quick acid profile, and it will be made in the fashion of Wensleydale, the original recipe. And it is, a lot of these territorials have many facets to them. They weren't all made in exactly the same way. I mean, the one we're all very familiar with is Lancashire, where you've got the acid Lancashire and the soft buttery Lancashire, and so was the same with Wensleydale. But another one you'll be familiar with is the Red Leicester, and Sparkenhoe is an extraordinary example of a traditional Red Leicester made in a traditional way, but not the recipe that we're so very used to at the moment.
It's true. It's true. I always think of myself as a bit of a. I think you need to get under the skin of some of these things, because it's not enough to use a traditional recipe. because a lot of things that we do today aren't traditional. We have fridges, we have dairy, different hygiene standards, we have different breeds of cattle. I mean, the black and whites that, you know, are the majority of the milking herd in the UK weren't introduced into the UK until the 1940s and 1950s. So a lot of the history of our cheese making recipes date back to a time when they weren't using the tools we're using today and the ingredients. To say with all honesty, we're using something more traditional or something more original than someone else, when we're starting from the base of we're not using the same ingredients, we're not using the same tools. I mean, take Red Leicester for an example. You know, I was chatting to it's Joe David Clark, and he produced this book about the Red Leicester, and he was talking about the grass that he was feeding it. They were feeding Red Leicester back then was a much worse quality of grass, lots of reed, lots of wet, more sort of quasi meadow pasture rather than the high quality pasture that we're feeding, you know, we're feeding today. And any cheesemaker goes on about the fact that the feed is so important. So it is quite difficult, I think, to plot our way back through time to be sure we know what we're talking about. And it seems to me that the SCA has a real resource there to help people understand how their decisions are traditional, but also modern.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there was a couple of points. Some of our territorials have been quite lost, and they've been commoditized. So we're used to seeing a style of Red Leicester or Caerphilly or Cheshire that comes in a backpack bag, and it's made in a big block to a specific recipe. And if you want any of those cheeses, that's the cheese you're likely to get, because it's the one most widely. At a point in time when those cheeses would have been made right across the Wensleydale area or right across the Caerphilly area, there would have been huge variation in the cheeses that were made. They wouldn't have all tasted just the same, because every farmstead that was making the cheese would have had their own take on you know, what tasted good and what they wanted to do. So I think that this is just getting behind that, the spirit of, again, diversity and breadth, and not all producing the same thing.
Okay, time to talk about your cheese. The Cornish Kern. This is an amazing cheese. This is sort of a fusion cheese. You've got a Gouda style. Well, it is slightly. You've got a Gouda style washed curd. You're using Alpine starters. You're using that buttery West Country milk. You're maturing it in your own biome. You're using a rind that sort of allows it to breathe, but also blocks out the development of molds and which is a very modern technology. You know, they had traditional methods of polypropyl rubbing or something, but this is quite new. So this is cutting edge technology.
It's all over the shop, really, isn't it?
How did you come up with it?
It's Cheesemakers Go Mad, isn't it? Well, we started with a Gouda recipe, and we really enjoyed the Goudas, but we wanted to just shift the flavor profile a wee bit. And so and we started experimenting with some of the Alpine starter cultures. This cheese here is 25 months. We've been working towards trying to get a slightly younger profile, but actually we're finding that it's just mellowing out and becoming so sort of sweet and savory, so close textured, a little bit of crystal development. We're getting so much from it at that extra sort of 4 or 5 months. It's really worth hanging on in there. It feels like a long time to wait for cheese, but it's
two biggest influences in Gouda and sort of the Alpines. They both very much flower at that 12, 14, 16 month period, don't they? They're really, you know, Gouda is arguably the most boring cheese of the world when it's young. I mean, it is the least tasty. Well, come on, you know what I mean? It's got that kind of elastic, kind of really. It's
Charlie, say what you really feel.
okay. Well, somebody has to be those boring. But it comes in. It's a late developer. It's like me. It's like me. You know, you didn't want to know me before I was 25. I was all over the shop. But I'm only 50 next year. I'm coming into my prime, and that's like Gouda. You know.
I'll bear that in mind every time I'm tasting Kern now.
Okay. I don't want to ruin it for you. You don't want to ruin it for you.
It does. It has been quite a surprise to us that it does seem to just be getting better and better as it gets older. So the interesting thing is how far are we going to take it? From a commercial point of view, it's not great having cheese on the shelves for 3 years.
No, I'm pretty sure that's true.
We don't really want to work into the world of, you know, the bank of Parmesan, but it is really interesting. And people say, you know, I think there's a common perception that because it's older, it means it's stronger. And actually, if stronger means more acid and stronger means a little bit more of a kind of kick at the back of the throat, this cheese has none of those things, but it's just developing that sort of intensity. And you get a sort of much greater more levels of complexity through it. So at the moment, we're feeling it's more interesting at this stage, and certainly when we're grading, we are just saying, no, let's hang on. So we're doing it to ourselves rather, but.
Well, I mean, that just brings us up to the point is you got the top of the tree, the best cheese awards in the world Cheese Awards Supreme Champion with this chap.
We did.
Am I right saying 2018?
Can you believe it? 17.
2017.
Yeah. Absolutely. Something else, isn't it? Weren't we in Norway in 2018?
Oh, I can't remember. It all fuses into one. You say that
I think we were in Norway.
Friends do it because they like each other. Well, I've been drinking with you in all these strange places, and I can reassure our visitors and our watchers that these people really do like each other, except when the previous chair, Tim Jones, starts playing poker, and then it goes a bit sideways. Just going to say that. Don't do that. Catherine, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure too.
Choices have been great, and
good.
Great luck keeping the specialist cheese making as that bright, shining light of cheese knowledge and cheese love that keeps these small cheesemakers producing their awesome products.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you on behalf of the cheese members, for all your support, Charlie. Because through the Academy and the Guild and the World Cheese Awards, you do amazing things. We're really grateful. Really grateful.
Well, let's all feel the love and keep on raising glasses and catches. Yeah. Thank you very much, Catherine.
Cheers. Thank you.
That was the inestimable, the amazing Catherine Mead, OBE. She is a real shining light. A shining light. It is fantastic to see such a skilled person treading that difficult path of commercial success and fantastic artisan skill. So let's have a quick look forward. Next week, we're exploring the world. We've got a specialist, South America's only wine sommelier, cool, and some South American cheeses from Chile. And we're going to be talking to a South American cheese specialist as well. So having done the best of the British, we are now reaching across all the way down to the South Atlantic and the about cheese. So I hope you'll join me next week. Always a Tuesday, always all of it is about cheese. So, and if you need to learn any more about cheese, you'll be pleased to know that I am doing online courses. The level 2, we're going to be launching that in November. So if you've done your level 1 cheese, the Academy of Cheese, and you want to do level 2, then my succinct yet verbose version of teaching is available to you. Love you very much. See you next week. It's been Tuesday night. It's been cheese night.